consulted with Prime Minister Maliki, and we've said that to him privately. We've said it publicly, that whether he is Prime Minister or any other leader aspires to lead the country, that it has to be an agenda in which Sunni, Shia, and Kurd all feel that they have the opportunity to advance their interests through the political process.
We are awash in discussion about American involvement with Iran to save what is left of Iraq. We are also bombarded with commentary and opinions about how Iran is the best bet because they want to save Iraq. But dig a little deeper, and you might find something much more sinister in the Iranian idea. And they might just wring their hands with glee at the thought of Iraq's collapse. Joining us now on Midpoint, the chief analyst for this is the Langley Intelligence Group Network, let me get that right. The Langley Intelligence Group Network. There you go. Former member of the CIA, Fred Fleitz, joins us today. Fred, thanks so much for being with us today.
Good to be here, Ed.
Let's go ahead and get right into that, because I want to point out that you believe that Iraq's collapse would be bad for Iran. And here's funny, because I just saw today there's a couple of articles passing that said the collapse could be good for Iran, that it would be their gain. Let's take it from your concept first as to why it would absolutely be a bad thing for Iran.
Well, my position, Ed, is that the current situation with the strongly pro-Iranian government of Prime Minister Maliki is a good situation for Iran. This is a government in Iraq that is promoting Shiite interests and is already close to Tehran. If this government were to fall, it would mean that a Sunni-dominated terrorist group would be stronger and would be on Iran's border. But perhaps most troubling for Iran's interests is that if ISIS, the Islamic State of Iran, and al-Sham, the terrorist group that is in Iraq and Syria, this group would gather more strength in Syria, which would upset Iran's interest in Syria, and that is promoting the Assad regime.
There seems to be a concept from some people that Iran may choose to act unilaterally in this. For whatever reason, I don't think that's logical.
I think Iran is going to try to shore up the Maliki government as much as it can, but I don't think Iran wants to get involved in a war in Iraq, and it doesn't want to alienate Shiites and Sunnis who don't want to see Iranian soldiers fighting in Iraq.
With regard then to what they can and can't do, let's take that a little step further here. What is Iran doing now, in your opinion, in the opinion of the folks at Lignet, that they might be doing to at least get involved? Certainly we know there is already some involvement there, but what are they doing behind the scenes right now to maybe set the stage for whatever they may plan?
I think there are a small number of Revolutionary Guard troops in Iraq right now propping up the Maliki regime. This is something that they're trying to keep out of sight. I think Iran is providing intelligence support and logistical support to the Maliki government. But beyond that, I think Tehran is probably stumped as to what it wants to do.
Let's talk about the Prime Minister there, because certainly in Barack Obama's speech yesterday, we heard the veiled reference where he said we would support Nouri al-Maliki if he stays or if there is someone else in power. What is the basic concept here and the basic thought that you have about what sort of a vacuum this might create? Because it would seem that that would be dangerous. We still don't know then who would gather power at that point in Iraq.
Well, I think Maliki has to go. And the biggest development today is that the leading Shiite cleric, Ayatollah Sistani, called for a new government today. He wants a new government that will unite Sunni and Shiite people, and he broke with other Shiite leaders and clerics in calling for this. He sees that Maliki's regime, which is sectarian and authoritarian, is basically dividing the country, and the only way to resolve the situation is to bring Sunnis back into the political process. I think there are alternatives to Maliki. And I think that's really the process we have to go through.
Would the Sunnis be welcome to that, though, I guess, at this point, after all that has happened?
Well, I think Sistani asking Maliki to leave will be welcomed by the Sunnis. And the Sunnis supporting ISIS, they're supporting them reluctantly. They know ISIS is tied to al-Qaeda. We know that Muslims don't like being part of al-Qaeda. It's a severe form of Islam. Most Sunnis in Iraq who are supporting ISIS are doing so out of a sense of opportunity to get back at Maliki and his government that has been discriminating against Sunnis. If the Sunnis were given a good reason to ally with the government. And if they saw that Maliki was leaving, I think ISIS would lose a lot of Sunni support.
There's been a lot of discussion about ISIS and that group getting their hands on a former chemical weapons supply, or a warehouse, if you will, that was put in place by Saddam Hussein. A lot of the questions that I'm hearing back and forth, hopefully you can answer, or at least what you're hearing from there. Is there a lot of material there? Is this something that we should be concerned about? Is this an old facility, perhaps, that may not be much to worry about?
Well, the chemicals in Iraq, the chemical weapon precursors, are supposedly from the first Iraq War. They're supposedly in hardened facilities. Now, whether they could be made into chemical weapons or not, ISIS would need assistance to do that. They also would need assistance in making munitions to use these weapons. I don't think they're going to NSA to use. In the first instance, NSA already has in mind protections, and it's not sure that this provision has been used. And in the second instance, it's also unclear NSA has ever used it. And even if it has, there's an important exception in this bill that allows the government to ask software makers to put backdoors in their software if there's a criminal investigation involved. So if the FBI wanted this, software makers would still do it, and that's how NSA will get this done if it needs to, such as to go after Al-Qaeda.
A fairly meaningless amendment. Gee, Fred, I don't know if we've ever heard that thinking process whatsoever before in Washington, D.C. I'm absolutely stunned that that would happen, as we all are, of course. Fred Fleitz from LigNet, thank you very much for joining us, Fred. We'll do it again. We want to remind everybody that for in-depth analysis and forecasting on Iraq and Iran, be sure that you go to lignet.com, the Langley Intelligence Group Network. It is your personal CIA for global intelligence. And now we talk to the intelligent audience here. Fred, thank you very much again for joining us, my friend. We'll talk to you again.
Thanks for having me.
All right. On social media, your chances now to talk about what we talk about here on Twitter, email, and Facebook. Because here on Midpoint, we question everything.